Hey guys, so great to see you again. I'm so glad you made your way back to our channel. If this is your first time watching us, welcome. My name is Jessie Hernandez. I'm Associate Pastor at Centro Cristiano Emanuel here in San Angelo, Texas. I serve under our awesome, amazing, wonderful lead pastors, Noe and Santa Ana Hernandez. I just want to take a moment to invite you to our in-person services. If you're in the area, if you're able to come in, we invite you personally to stop by and join us. We have prayer at 9 o'clock. We have our bilingual service in English and in Spanish at 10 o'clock. And then on Wednesdays, we have an in-person Bible study in our sanctuary. We have prayer at 6 and the Bible study at 7. We hope to see you soon. So for those of you that have been following along, you know that we are in the life and teachings of Christ. If you are not familiar with this curriculum or with this textbook, the links below on the description page will show you where you can find this book and where you can order it. And essentially, that is the curriculum that we're using for these next few months. Where we will be going through, again, the life and teachings of Christ. So today, we're on lesson 2D, Unit 2, Chapter 3, Lesson 2D, and we're talking about revenge. We're talking about revenge. So this is Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 42. Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 42. Let me read these scriptures really quickly. If you're reading along in your Bible, you will notice, as most Bibles do, the heading on these scriptures or on this paragraph of scriptures is actually called an eye for an eye. An eye for an eye. So Matthew 5, 38 to 42 in the New International Version says, verse 38, "You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth." Verse 39, "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." Verse 40, "And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well." Verse 41, "If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Verse 42, "Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." So he seems to cover a lot of ground here, but essentially he's talking about the idea of fairness, and that revenge is rooted in our desire for fairness, in our desire for justice. And so the old way of getting justice, the old way of getting fair treatment, quote unquote, was 1 for 1, right? 1 for 1, 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 2 for 2. So if you gouge out my eye, I'm gouging out your eye. If you knock out my tooth, I'm knocking out your tooth. And so that way, both of us are toothless, and both of us are eyeless, and both of us are legless, and both of us have a chunk of hair missing. Like, it was very literal, because for most people, the idea or the notion of fairness is based off of our sensory experience, right? So what we see, what we hear, what we feel dictates to us what is fair and what is not fair. And so I want to talk for a moment, just a moment, about this idea of balancing the scales. Now, we as human beings, we can't escape that, right? No matter how good things are or how bad things are, we are always balancing our scales, and we're evaluating whether we have enough or don't have enough, whether we need more, whether we should have more. And we're obsessed with the idea of fairness. We're obsessed with the idea of being treated fairly and treated justly and treated the way we deserve. And for the most part, I would say at the heart of these emotions, at the heart of these sentiments, even at the heart of just the concept of fairness and justice, I believe it's good. I believe in fairness. I believe in justice. I believe in equality. I believe we should all have the opportunity to move forward and make progress and be blessed and you know, make a name or a life or whatever it is that we're hoping to build or to accomplish. We should all have the opportunity to do that and to be that and accomplish those things. So I absolutely understand this idea of fairness and balancing the scales. The problem is, and this is kind of where we cross over into where we are in our current, you know, state as a world, as a culture, as a society. The problem is that we are not objective. We evaluate fairness from a subjective point of view. So for us, it's not necessarily what is actually fair, it's what's fair to me. What's just for me? What is good for me? What is balanced for me? We base our individual idea or notion of fairness on what benefits us. And so our fairness is biased. Our justice is biased. And so we look at these scriptures and we're like, well, sure, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, that absolutely makes sense. And then Jesus takes it up another level and he's like, but I don't want you to be that way. I don't want you to be the type of person that demands that the scales are balanced, that demands that, well, if I'm going to be without, you're going to be without. And if you're going to have a piece, then I'm going to have a piece. He essentially just knocks that notion right on its butt and says, look, if you are slapped, turn the other cheek. And if somebody's going to sue you, give them your coat. And if somebody asks you to go a mile, go 2 miles. And so essentially he's saying, don't be that person that is fighting in situations where really truly the fairness that you're seeking, the justice that you're seeking, it's a subjective justice, and there is no true fairness and no true justice outside of God. And so God, because again he sees everything and he knows everything, his justice is the only true justice. His justice is truly fair and balanced because he sees motivations, he sees intentions, he sees the thoughts and the hearts of man on levels that we cannot. And so while we're always pulling for ourselves, Jesus says, if you want to be my follower, if you want to really live a life where essentially you're living at peace and you're living with joy and you're living with contentment and satisfaction, then you've got to learn to let this petty stuff go. And so the reason that I say specifically petty stuff is because look at what he's talking about. Look at what he's actually saying. He says that his way includes letting go of insults, disposable property, and even minor work and service. And so let me tell you where I get this from, okay? So in the Greek, it's actually a turn of phrase. Here when it says somebody slaps you on the cheek, in the original Greek, it actually means the backhand to the cheek. And the backhand to the cheek was a turn of phrase that Greeks used to use when they meant an insult. And so if they were to say, "Ooh, you got slapped in the face," not literally, you didn't literally get slapped in the face, you got insulted. So again, that's not, Jesus is not advocating violence. He's not saying if somebody hits you, let him hit you on the other side. That's not what he's saying. He's not talking about physical assault. So I just wanted to put that out there, okay? We're not talking about physical assault or violence of any kind. It's a turn of phrase that means insult. And so essentially he says, look, if somebody's insulting you, let them insult you. Let it go. In fact, give them another reason to insult you. And I know that it sounds a little counterintuitive, but essentially he's saying, look, if your trust is in me, if your faith is in me, if your confidence is in me, then when people make fun of you or people insult you, it shouldn't matter to you. It shouldn't hurt you. It should be like water running off a duck's back. It just rolls off. In fact, and again, this is just a very simple example that I'm going to use. If they're making fun of your hair, fine, okay, make fun of my hair. Why don't you also make fun of my glasses? Now, I'm talking about me personally, right? You don't like my hair? Cool. How about my glasses? You want to make fun of my glasses? I got a broken tooth. You want to make fun of a broken tooth? I'm a big girl. You want to make fun of how big I am? It shouldn't matter if our confidence and our trust and our safety and our security is in the Lord. Those little things should not matter. And so essentially he says, you gotta let insults, you gotta let them go. That's not something that you should get riled up over. It's not something that you should get angry about. It's not something that you should let it get to you to the point where you want to shoot back. Now, I don't know about you, but this is very hard for me. I'm the type of person that I'm quick. You say something, I say something. You do something, I do something. And so I have had to learn over the course of time when somebody does something or says something that I don't like to just take a breath and let it go. Take a breath and calm down. Take a breath and keep my mouth shut, because it's not worth it. We did a lesson a few weeks back or a couple of weeks back talking about anger, and essentially we talked about how anger isn't a sin, but what you do with that anger is a sin. And so this is just Jesus reiterating this idea that this notion of getting into sin or getting into an area where you get carnal and you get in your flesh and you jeopardize your salvation because somebody insulted you is just, it's ridiculous. An insult is nothing. It's something petty. It's something small, and you should let it go. The next thing he says, if anybody is suing you, take off your shirt and hand over your coat. So to me, he's talking about getting sued over a shirt and giving them not only your shirt but your coat. He's talking about disposable property, right? So he's talking about little things that you don't necessarily need. They're not going to necessarily change the course of your life. If you lose them, if somebody steals them, if somebody's trying to take them away, there are things that we have, material things, that if we lose them or somebody takes them away from us, we should just let it go. Okay, they took your shirt, they took your shoes, they took whatever it is. Now, obviously, disposable property, I'm not talking about your house or your vehicle or other, larger things. Disposable property are those small things that you can do without. So somebody stole a dish, a glass, a figurine, somebody took your scarf. These are things that you, again, should not get riled up over. You should not try to seek revenge for those types of disposable, materialistic things. Disposable property is not something that you should get in the flesh about or get carnal about and hold against someone and try to get revenge because of these small things that you may have lost or they may have taken. And then the other thing he says is walking a mile, and if they ask you to walk a mile, then walk two with them. And the book mentions a little bit about this idea how back in Jesus' time, the Roman soldiers could force people essentially to carry their stuff for a mile, like that. The law allowed for them to force a Jewish person to walk a mile carrying the soldier's stuff. And so Jesus says here, he uses this example because he knows what they're talking about. He knows that they know what he's talking about. And he says, if you're going to go one with them, go ahead and go two. This is another, in my opinion, a petty thing, because we're talking about light work or light service, right? We're not talking about being committed. We're not talking about having a contract with a workplace. We're talking about if you volunteer your time somewhere, or if you serve somewhere, or if you minister somewhere, or if you're just helping a friend out or helping a family member out, and maybe they're making it heavy and maybe they're putting more on you than you can appreciate. God says, do it and then do a little bit more. Because the truth is, those are small things. Those are temporary things. Those are light things that again, if you said yes to volunteering or to helping or to organizing or to communicating or whatever you said yes to, if you didn't want to do it, you should have said no. But because you said yes, go, give it all you got. Give your 110%. Because it's the right thing to do. Again, even if you do feel like you're being forced into it or you feel like you're being obligated to get it done, Jesus says, just go ahead and do it. And then the very last part says, give to the one who asks you and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And again, I think that speaks to generosity. We've spoken about generosity as one of the Christian characters or expressions of Christian character. And this idea here is like, don't get in a tizzy. Don't throw a fit because somebody's asking you for money. And again, I'm talking about smaller, right, amounts. I'm not talking about thousands or tens of thousands. Well, I guess it depends on your income. If you're able to do thousands and tens of thousands, then it's no big deal. The vast majority of us, we're talking 5, 10, 20, maybe $50. Those, people in your life that are constantly hitting you up for money or constantly asking you for money, within reason, the Lord says, just let it go. Like, don't get angry about it. Don't get frustrated about it. Just, be generous. Don't turn them away. If it's possible, don't turn them away. If you have the money and you can, awesome. If you can't, that's fine, but you don't have to get angry about it. You don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to be nasty about it. Just be honest and open with the person. And again, all these things are things that, in my opinion, are things that would annoy us, things that would frustrate us, things that would try to make us feel bad or bring negative thoughts into our mind. I mean, these are things that if we are, again, living and trusting and believing in God and putting our faith in Him and our hope in Him, these are little things that we should be able to just brush off and be like, okay, again, you want to insult me? Here's something else. You want my shirt? You want to take something from me? Here's something else. You need, you need me to help you for an hour, I'll help you for 2 hours. There are things that we just surrender and that we just give up because there's no reason to get angry and frustrated and to get carnal over these things and then, and then sin because of these things. And so an eye for an eye, this idea of getting revenge, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, within reason, God says, just let it go. Within reason, just let it go. And again, we're not talking about physical assault. We're not talking about like your house or your car. We're not talking, within reason, let it go. So moving on to what the book says, the book, again here talking about revenge, the first point that it makes says revenge should be left to God. And so essentially they are talking about how back in the day, when the Mosaic law was in place, essentially the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was a law that was given to keep people in check. And so again, going back to this idea of balancing the scales or fairness, they didn't want to leave it up to the people because people have a tendency when they're angry and they want to get revenge or they want to get vengeance, they have a tendency to just run with that motion, run with that concept. And it's like, oh, you gouged out my one eye, I'm going to gouge out both of your eyes. You cut off my one hand, I'm going to cut off both your legs, right? So people have a tendency to like run and get out of control. And so the reason for this initial law, the book explains to us, is because they didn't want, God didn't want people getting out of control. And so essentially you would bring a case like this before the judges and the judges would mete out fairness. The judges who were supposed to be righteous, who were supposed to have a deep and spiritual understanding of the scripture and the Torah, and were supposed to have, active prayer lives and relationships with God, they were supposed to mete out what they believed was fair. So if you lost this, then the perpetrator loses this, and if you got this stolen, then the perpetrator has to lose this and return whatever. And so essentially it was to place a boundary so that people wouldn't go crazy and start taking 2 for 1 or 3 for 1 or 4 for 1 to keep the balance of 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, instead of, for my 1 offense, I'm now going to cut you 3 times. And for my 2 offenses, I'm now going to hit you 10 times. Like, to keep the scales balanced, that's why it was sort of passed down. And so Jesus translates this to today and essentially says, God is the ultimate judge. And this is sort of what the book explains to us. God is the ultimate judge. And we can trust him that whatever he metes out, whatever consequences result from us bringing the problem to him, the situation to him, the offense to him, if we go to him and present it to him, we can trust that as a God who sees all and knows all and is holy and just, he will deal with us in a way that is fair, that is truly objectively fair, and not subjectively fair, but objectively fair and just. And then the book goes on to give us 3 examples. Again, we just talked about the second mile in verse 41, about going above and beyond. The turning the cheek, Matthew 5:39, about group responsibility, and then settling outside of court, Matthew 5:40, try to if you can. So about these 3, let me just say really quickly. The book says on going the second mile about going above and beyond, not to repeat myself, but essentially it's saying you want to have that generosity of spirit when you're helping people. You want to love them in a way that we can love people and show them that we're legit, and show them that we're real, and show them that we mean what we say and we are who we are in terms of children of God, in terms of servant of the Lord, is by going above and beyond. And it sort of gives this story of this lady. The book gives this story of this lady who her husband was pretty hard on her, and her husband would require her to do a lot of things at the house. On top of all that, she would then go and help her neighbors and help her church and help different community organizations. And in the story, her pastor essentially asked, you have a lot to do in your home already. Are you sure you can do all this extra stuff and outside of your house? And essentially she says, I have to do the extra stuff because it's the extra stuff that fills my heart with joy, that fills my soul with satisfaction. I do what I have to do, and then everything else that I do beyond that, I do it because I want to do it, because it's in my heart to do it, because I have the time and the energy and the resources to do it. So please don't stop me from going above and beyond, because that is where I do get my joy and my satisfaction and my sense of contribution, my sense of being able to make a change and a difference in the world. And so essentially what the book is teaching us is do what you have to do. Like, don't disregard your responsibilities, your duties. What you have to do, get that done. But don't be lazy. Don't waste whatever time or abilities or talents or resources that you have. If you can, do more. If you're able to give of yourself or give of your resources more, do what you can, because it's in that overflow, it's in that extra, it's in that above and beyond where we find sort of the joy and the satisfaction in our soul that God gives us, how he honors us with that joy and that inner peace when we put ourselves to go through that second mile, that extra, that above and beyond. So I really like the point that the book makes there. The turning the cheek one is also the book talks about group responsibility. Now, I shy away from collectivism because I don't necessarily believe in collectivism, and I know that right now this socialism and communism is really popular. I don't believe in it. I don't agree with it. I don't believe in the collective. I believe that we are all uniquely made in the image of God. All of us are created by him. He breathes life into all of us. He designates everything from the simplest thing like the color of our eyes to our height, everything about us, our personality. He shapes it all and he molds it all and he forms it all when we are in our mother's womb. So I believe that we are unique. But the book talks about group responsibility, and I do believe that on occasion we are accountable to a group or two groups. And in this instance, I'm going to use the example of, for instance, your family. And I spoke last week about divorce, and I spoke about how God's intention is to protect the partner, and especially when you and your partner have children. Now all of a sudden you are a family unit, and so sometimes you need to suck up the individual offense in order to protect the family, because you're not by yourself. You're not an individual, right? If you're a single person with no attachments and no commitments and no responsibilities, then it's your choice if you want to commit yourself to a group. But particularly talking to family people, to people who have close family members that you are connected to, you have a good relationship with them, and you consider yourself a part of the family, a part of the group. You have a unit that you exist in and through and for and with, then yeah, occasionally the individual offense has to be put aside in order to benefit the family unit. The individual offense has to be put aside in order to protect the family unit. And so as far as the individual is concerned, again, it's up to you. If you decide to be a part of a church, if you decide to be a part of an organization, if you decide to go to school, because even in school, right, you have to sign like honor codes and different things like that. If you decide as an individual to commit yourself to be a part of a group, then occasionally you will have to surrender the individual offense in order, again, to protect the group. So this idea of group responsibility is universal to a certain degree, because we all experience being part of some type of unit. For the most part, all of us at some point in time will be part of a unit, whether it's a family unit, a friend unit, a work unit, an organizational unit of some sort, like a church or a fraternity or a sorority, or all different kinds of ways that we group ourselves. At some point, we will have to take a personal hit in order for the benefit and protection and just the forward movement of our group. Now, again, I don't advocate collectivism, and I don't want to go into this idea or this notion that we have to literally sacrifice everything for the good of the collective. I don't believe in collectivism. I don't believe socialism or communism is a good thing. But for your family unit, for your friend unit, for the smaller groups of people that you connect yourself to, again, occasionally sacrifice your own offense for the benefit and the protection and the forward movement of your group. The last thing, again, that the book talks about is settling outside of court. This is also really hotly contested in the churches, and it's not because there isn't a clear directive, because the directive, in my opinion, is pretty clear. Jesus is saying, if you can settle out of court, settle out of court. And even when Paul's talking to the Corinthians, Paul's talking to a people who is subject to a secular legal system. And so Paul essentially says, look, the judges placed before you, they're not righteous. They're not saved. They don't know God. They're not holy. They will not mete out justice that is fair or beneficial for you. You as a Christian, you as somebody who is saved, you who have decided to trust in the Lord, do your best to settle outside of court. Now, and the book mentions this, today things are a little bit different, right? Today we do have Christian judges and Christian arbiters and Christian lawyers and Christian jurors. And so, there is a legal system in place. It's not perfect, but we can, put a modicum of trust in our legal system. Nonetheless, as Christians, if we are able to settle a matter without going to court, settle the matter. Do everything you can to settle the matter without going to court. And that's why we were talking earlier about how my interpretation of the scripture is that Jesus is saying, if it's within reason, let it go. The petty stuff, let it go. If, for instance, if it's not life-changing money, let it go. If it's not life-changing property, let it go. If it's not a life-changing situation, let it go. Again, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about severe or extreme neglect. I'm not talking about large pieces of property like cars and houses and land. I'm not talking about, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. That's not what I'm talking about. If it's life-changing, it's up to you. to pursue it. But if it's not life-changing, if it's not life-altering, you should let it go. And so essentially, again, that's what the book says. If you can settle out of court, do your best to settle out of court. All right, guys, that's all I have for you this week. I want to encourage you to come back next week. Next week, we're going to be going over Lesson 2E, Chapter 3, Unit 2, Lesson 2E, Love for Enemies. If you want to read ahead of time, the scriptures we're looking at is Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 to 48, Luke chapter 6, verses 27 to 36. We're finally going to bring in a little bit of Luke here. Hopefully you get a chance to study. It's really good. I encourage you to read ahead. If not, I will see you next week, and we will read some of these scriptures together next week. Aside from that, guys, if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead, take a moment, subscribe to our channel, CC Emanuel. Hit the notification button so that way you know when new content is being uploaded. If you'd rather follow us on Facebook, we are on Facebook under the profile Noe Hernandez, CC Emanuel. You can follow us there and friend us. Thanks again. Have a great week. Bye.